Welcome to the program today. My name is Master Gonzalez, and I have two guys in here today, Dr. Thomas Horn and Josh Peck. Welcome, guys.
Hey, great to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Nice to meet you guys. And we are going to be talking about a new book coming out, Zeitgeist. And as we get going here, I've read the book. It's awesome. It reminds me of biblical doctrine, history, United States history, as well as like a sci-fi thriller all in one. Some people might not know, but talk about Zeitgeist. That's a word that I'm sure a lot of people aren't familiar with. Tell us kind of how the title came about, even the date on there.
Yeah, Zeitgeist, and then 2025, which makes you think, okay, what is Tom doing here, setting a date for something, right? Zeitgeist is a compound German word. The first part of it, Zeit, simply means time or an era, a moment in time, an epoch. And the word Geist, of course, is the German word for ghost. You know, most people have probably at some point heard of the term poltergeist, a noisy ghost, right? But when you put them together, generally what it means is the spirit of the age or the spirit of an age. And it's been used throughout history as a term that describes revolutionary moments in time. One of the best examples, actually, of Zeitgeist was the French Revolution. And so over here in the United States of America, while we're having a revolution that is mostly built on the idea of personal and religious liberties and freedoms, they were experiencing just the opposite over there. The French Revolution actually became anti-God, so much so that eventually they marched into the church in Notre Dame and put a statue of a naked woman on the altar and proclaimed the God of Christianity dead. Literally tens of thousands of Christians died, under Robespierre in the guillotines. But if you read the historians, especially one by the name of Cassot, writing about how did that ever happen, he says something very interesting. He says, it became apparent to some of us that the revolution came under the influence of an egregore, which is the Greek word for watcher, a very powerful fallen angel that in this case is actually fed by, nourished by revolutionary ideas. And the more the revolution grows, the more the power of the egregore grew to influence. So that now we're literally talking a zeitgeist, a spirit as in the sense of a fallen spirit, a principality that was influencing that age. Now, so the title of the book, Zeitgeist 2025, is given because I believe that America is going through a similar revolution right now. 10 years ago, the highest intelligence agencies in the United States, working with 13 other European countries and their intelligence agencies, they did an amazing thing. Anybody can go to Google and simply just type in Global Governance 2025. Now, why did they, again, pick the year 2025 for the appearance of a global government? Well, they put all their reasons down. It's pretty amazing, actually, because what they did was this. They came together and they said, what might be the trigger event or trigger events that could suddenly cause all of the nations of the world to have to come together in mutual defense of one another against an existential threat. It almost reminds you of Ronald Reagan standing before the United Nations, right? Saying, I often imagine if aliens suddenly appeared over the White House, how this would make us lay down all of our differences and come together for, this great need or cause or potential threat. And so what did they write about? Well, they wrote about, the possibility that it suddenly becomes obvious that one of the asteroids that NASA's NEOWISE have said, yeah, it's going to come close to the Earth, think Apophis 2029, but it's going to skim past, it's not going to hit us. But then it's like that movie that's out right now.
Greenland?
Greenland, yeah. Where right up to the last minute, the government keeps saying, no, it's not going to hit us, it's going to skim, and then all of a sudden, you see all the transport devices taking, the ones who can go to their underground bunker, and it strikes the Earth. And we could also talk about how that's connected to 2025, but I won't. But the intelligence agencies, they saw something like that. So people that get the book, Zeitgeist 2025, I go through numerous examples of intelligence agencies, historians, and also, yes, prophets, who foresaw 2025 as the beginning of the end, if you're a prophecy believer. Now, we have Josh Peck with us today, who wrote the book, the Lost Prophecies of Qumran. And he might be able to explain to the audience better than I can why the ancient Essenes, who frankly were probably the most accurate Hebrew prophets in history, and again, mind-blowing stuff. He could give examples of that they predicted ahead of the event, including the appearance of Jesus, when he would come, how he would die, how he would live, the year he would die. Everything else 200 years before he showed up. But the Essenes also said that mankind will enter its final age beginning in the year 2025. They predicted that 2,200 plus years ago. And maybe, Josh, you could explain a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So this was pretty amazing because Tom and I did not plan this, but just at the same time, it must have been a God thing, the year 2025 was coming up in his research, which was, founding of America, all that stuff, and in mine, which was half a world and 2,000 years away from those events, and Dead Sea Scroll stuff, Qumran. So basically, what we have is a third group that a lot of people don't know about during the time of Christ, of Jewish people. We know about Pharisees and Sadducees. A lot of people haven't heard of the Essenes. These were typically the people in the Gospels that accepted Jesus real quickly. Sometimes there's these accounts in the Gospels where you have these people that'll argue with Jesus like constantly, and no matter what he says, these people cannot be convinced. And then there's other times where he just walks into a town and hundreds of people fall down and worship. Well, I think what it is those, at least generally speaking, probably not every individual, but those were Essenes. Because when you read the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is their writings, they came on the scene about 200-300 years before the time of Christ. They kept the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are every book of our Bible except Esther, and then some extra biblical stuff that they kept about their own community and even prophecies. Well, when you tie all that together, they had this understanding of what are called ages. They had a totally different calendar than we do. While we have centuries and decades, they had things like jubilees and shmitas. What's really interesting is they had this concept of what's called ages. So they saw the totality of human history as being 7,000 years split up into 3.5 ages. So an age is 2,000 years. The last age, the previous age to ours, was called the Age of Torah, and that started at the call of Abraham and lasted all the way until 75 AD. Well, a jubilee is 50 years, and at the end of every age, it seems like that final jubilee is where all the prophetic stuff happens. So think about the final jubilee, the final 50 years of the Age of Torah, which would have been from 25 AD to 75 AD. So in that 50-year period, you have everything Jesus did in his earthly ministry. You have the beginning of the church. You have the destruction of the temple. Yeah. There's so much prophecy being fulfilled in that last 50 years. The age before that, which is called the Age of Creation or Age of Confusion, that last time period there, you have the Tower of Babel, which led to the call of Abraham. Well, we are now in a time where we are just about to enter the final jubilee of our age, which the Essenes actually called the Age of Grace, because it's amazing. They knew who the Messiah was. They knew what he was set to do. We're always taught that nobody at that time knew what Jesus was going to do. Nobody really knew who the Messiah was. The Pharisees and Sadducees didn't know, but the Essenes did. So they foresaw the time that we're about to enter into, 2025 to 2075, as the final Jubilee. And we still have a lot of prophecy that needs to be fulfilled. So we're entering an exciting time.
So this is where specifically the 2025 number comes in.
Yeah. So it was amazing because he had already discovered that with his own research. And what's amazing is these secular historians, people today, they're confirming what the ancient Essenes 2,000 years ago said. And they pointed to that exact date as being the start of the final Jubilee. Now, some people hear the date or the year 2075 because the Jubilee ends in 2075. That's technically when our age is supposed to end according to the Essene calendar, which so far—
last Jubilee period. Mm-hmm.
Right, which so far has been absolutely accurate. So stands to reason it still might be. While there is an exact year, 2075, prophetic events don't always happen quite as easily. or quite as like right on the dot. So you can't really predict like the beginning of the tribulation, but once it happens, then you know a lot of other things that'll happen after that. What we don't know is if we're going to get a tribulation early in our Jubilee, just like Jesus' earthly ministry was early in their final Jubilee, or if it's going to be at the end. But either way, if the Essenes are right, we have this 50-year period, and of course we have to bring up too, sometime between now and then there's a rapture too, which isn't involved with the calendar. So we as the church have that to look forward to. So don't let the year 2075 scare you. There's going to still be a lot of things happening in the next few years.
I mean, as we think about what the Bible tells us, you know, certainly the end of the age is coming. It's no surprise that all this research is coming out, you know, coming to be. I mean, we think about your research, and I hope all of us, as we think about Scripture, oftentimes we get thrown into the conspiracy category. And I think, do you read your Bible? I mean, we know that there is a master conspirator who knows that he, according to the book of Revelation, is going to have this time that he is going to be given to receive worship and receive, you know, really world domination and, you know, totalitarian rule. So do you think he's been sitting idle? You know, he's been arranging and he's been working. He's the prince of the power of the air. The whole world lies under the sway of the wicked one. So this isn't unusual in the sense of to watch where we're going. And it's not going to happen overnight. All these things, as you mentioned, especially in the book, is talking about the ways and the decades in order to get us to a certain point, as well as speaking to the spirit of the age, that there are real spirits. One of the things that we've been talking about, and we asked a question at the beginning, and I would really love to hear your thoughts on, is America, we have this idea that America was this pure, pristine Christian nation. There's no doubt there were true, genuine Christians who loved God, loved Jesus. But when we think about the founding fathers, there's this, I think, really abnormal allegiance to this idea. Some of the things you bring out in the book is really, you know, the architecture of the Washington, D.C., the other founding fathers, the things that they were involved in. Kind of talk about that.
Yeah, so I like to say this. Many people will say, and Christians want to believe, that America was founded as a Christian nation. Well, in the purely technical sense, that was not true at all. For the most part, many of America's early leaders, when they do speak of God, they're using Freemasonic terms like the great architect of the universe. These are not biblical terms. They could be deistic terms. George Washington was a deist according to his own pastor. Washington's pastor was once asked, do you believe that George Washington was a Christian? He said, best I could tell, he was a deist. And so that would have been very common, really, at that time. That was, you know, but what I like to say is that while America was not founded as a Christian nation, America became a Christian nation anyway, because of the power of the preaching of the gospel, because of the Pilgrim movement, because of the Puritan movement, which were, by the way, often derided by the founding fathers of the United States, who was highly critical of their beliefs about the deity of Jesus Christ and so on. And so, thankfully, we became a Christian nation. Now we might be seeing just the opposite of that. All the polling numbers are showing that you know, church attendance is not what it once was, and it isn't just because of coronavirus. People have kind of lost their interest in traditional Christianity. Most Americans among and these are polling above 50% among the millennial generation, the Z generation, they really more like, well, kind of what many of these early founding fathers were, universalism. The idea that you can pick and choose the parts of the Bible or Jesus that you want to believe, but you mix it into this hodgepodge of other New Age ideas. Whatever makes you feel good about yourself, man, you know, that's the one. Most recent polling showing that young people believe that you can get to heaven as easily through Buddha or Muhammad or whatever as you might be able to get to into heaven trying to come through Jesus, right? He's no longer exclusively the sheep gate. He kind of shares that responsibility with all these other effects. So we would laugh at that and call it nonsense, but again, it is a zeitgeist. It is the spirit of the age. It is what is catching on in the here and now. Okay, very quickly to answer your question, because I know we'll run out of time. You know, you look at famous Freemasons like Manly P. Hall. He was one of the most famous 33rd degree Freemason, a high-level mystic. He wrote and gave like thousands of lectures and dozens of books. One of his most famous is called The Secret Destiny of America. Now, why? did he use that term? Well, because he was very familiar with the early founding fathers. He was probably more studied than anybody at the time on their backgrounds, their history, their belief system, and so on. And so he would point out things like, if you look at 1776 and the signing of the Declaration of Independence, the three authors, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin, within the same 24 hours of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, they were given the responsibility to start formulating the first drafts of what today we would call the Great Seal of the United States of America. We're now a newly independent nation. We're going to need a Great Seal for our federal buildings and documents. And also, the Great Seal should convey something about who we are, perhaps our destiny, where we're going. So you look at the three guys. You were a pastor for years, and if you wanted a steering committee to come up with, whatever, a scheme to develop or build or whatever something, you would pick people who you felt were technically qualified or their worldview. I mean, but they would have to have some reason why they're sitting on that committee to steer it towards its intended goal. So that's what they chose, the writers of the Declaration of Independence. So you have John Adams. John Adams absolutely rejected the faith of his fathers, became something of a universalist, despised the teachings of the Puritans involving the deity of Jesus Christ and the Trinity. These were all things that they said belong on the dunghill of history, that these were absolute non-truths, perversions of Scripture, whatever. So what to make of a guy like John Adams? But Thomas Jefferson, even worse. Thomas Jefferson called some of the writings of Jesus Christ the babblings of a madman. And then, as you were talking to me before the show, literally had the audacity of taking the New Testament and going through with a pair of scissors and a razor blade and literally cutting out every reference in the New Testament to the deity of Christ, any of his miracles, any claim to being God in flesh, cut all of that out of the New Testament. And then because the book of Revelation speaks of the second coming, he just cut that entire book out, taped it all back together, made his own approved version. And by the way, in his own writings, he said that all he had done was taken the dross of the dunghill. Today we would use a much more profane word to say exactly the same thing he said about what he didn't agree with that Jesus taught or did or the disciples or whatever. So he removed the dunghill from the New Testament, taped it back together, and that became his approved version of the New Testament. That's called the Jefferson Bible. It's kept at the Smithsonian, and every great once in a while they bring it out and they put it on display. One other final thing, Benjamin Franklin, worst of all. Franklin was the head of numerous secret societies and Freemasonic orders, including being the head of some of them, both in the United States and across Europe. But worst of all, he was also a member of the Hellfire Club that met across Europe in the 1700s to mock God, to mock Jesus Christ, to mock the Holy Bible, and to conduct orgies. But again, it could have been much worse than that, because in 1998, and you can Google these stories and read them from the British, not tabloid, the British press. In 1998, they reported a story that they were renovating the home of Benjamin Franklin. From the time that he lived there, they went down through the house, they're renovating, painting, all that. They get to the bottom of the house, and they remove the floorboards in the house to put in new floorboards, and they made the grisly discovery of numerous adults and children that had been hacked into pieces, sawn apart with saws, and then burned with fire, and then hidden beneath the floorboards of Benjamin Franklin's home from the time that he lived there. So many people in the British press, their journalists were saying, you know what, we think we uncovered evidence that Franklin wasn't just the head of a secret society, the guy was a practicing Satanist, and that they were conducting literal human sacrifices. Well, these are the three guys who are picked. Now, once you know that they're the ones that are formulating the early drafts of the Great Seal, then they're passing that forward to Thompson, who was the Secretary of Congress at the time, to carry forward their ideas. Now it starts making sense. The all-seeing eye of Horus hovering over an uncapped 13-stepped pyramid. The mottos on the Great Seal that are taken from the prophecies of the Cumae Sibyl who predicts at the end of time, the Novus Ordo Seclorum, the new order of the ages, in which even our own former President George W. Bush, who was a large contributor to Freemasonry, said it is an ancient scheme that is meant to be fulfilled. Well, what is this scheme? That's what Manly Hall called the secret destiny of America. We are marching forward towards the Novus Ordo Seclorum, the new order of the ages, in which the Cumae Sibyl says it will experience the second coming of the god Apollo. And as his father Jupiter, symbolized by the eagle, the ancient pagan symbol of Jupiter on the front side of the Great Seal of the United States, beneath a hexagram made up of 13 stars, which 33rd degree Freemasons and occultists use for invoking the second coming of those gods. Anyway, it goes far, it goes deep and wide. Hopefully I covered it all in the book. There's the 1.5 hour documentary film I think that they're getting with the book that really goes into all of these details that answers this question. Were we founded as a Christian nation? No, but we became one. We could have another great awakening. They have a plan. God has a better one. It's important to know whose side you're on.
You know, this is all excellent information, and we're going to take a little break here to show you how you can get this. As I read the book, it's incredible. You will really want to know this, so we're going to be back in a moment.
There's no doubt that you've heard things today that you will likely never hear about in church. As always, we enjoy bringing you the experts on subjects that could dramatically affect your life in the days ahead. Can there be any doubt that we're watching what the Bible calls the birth pains leading up to the rapture of the church? We are certainly living in unprecedented times, the times the prophets of the Bible predicted some 2,500 years ago. But we know that the only answer to the world's problems is Jesus, and like many of you, we are anxiously awaiting his soon return. Tom's book, Zeitgeist 2025, Countdown to the Secret Destiny of America, may be the most fascinating book I've ever read. We've only covered a small portion of its 366 pages on the program today, but you are in for a shocking expose on world events as seen through the eyes of the ancient prophets and historians who appear to have seen the disconcerting and troubling future of America years in advance. Tom's book is available for your gift of $30 or more to support the worldwide ministry of Prophecy Watchers, and it comes with a free bonus, his explosive new DVD, The Secret Destiny of America Revealed. And as always, we'll ship both the book and the DVD to you for free anywhere in the USA. Just call the toll-free number you see on your screen or visit our online bookstore at prophecywatchers.tv. Jesus used the words many of us have repeated over the years. Let not your heart be troubled. I go to prepare a place for you. I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. We believe that day is coming very soon. The signs of the times are upon us. So pray and ask the Lord for wisdom during these trying and confusing times. And keep watching. We are.
Well, I hope you take advantage of that offer because this new book, as well as the company information DVD, is just absolutely incredible to show us that something's coming. We don't have to be surprised, or I think none of us would be surprised as we look around and think, what's it gonna, how bad is it going to be in just a couple of years?
Absolutely.
There's so much here that we haven't got into, which I think God has allowed to be made known through research and other things, especially, and it coincides all with Scripture. So we appreciate you watching today. And as always, we want to remind people the reason that we're here is to inform. God has allowed these things to come to be, to point us to really the gospel of Jesus Christ, knowing that the end is coming, his return is here, but it's all been laid out, not only in Scripture, but God has allowed, surprisingly, some of these other things to be made known in these other areas. But the goal is to draw you to him. That's what he wants. So thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.